Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another Spooktober episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is JD, and who's here with me?
It's Michelle.
Michelle. That's how we're doing that today, I guess.
Apparently, we gotta jazz it up a little bit.
Right. You guys know how we do here at We Watch Shudder. It's right there in the name. We Watch Shudder. We talk about original and exclusive releases, things you can only see through the Shudder streaming service. And this month, we're going back and looking at a bunch of titles that were released before we started the podcast. And just getting caught up on some things. We're doing one a day. I hope you're keeping up, or at least listening to the ones that seem interesting to you. If you're not listening, none of this matters. I'm talking into the void.
I'm listening.
Michelle's always listening. Yeah, we do this for our egos and to pretend that we have something to contribute to the world. Well, I pretend anyway.
That got so depressing. Depression, the true scary part.
All right, guys,
October.
look, let's go ahead and get right to it. You know by now it's not October when we're recording this. It's May 25th. No. I just was summarily terminated from my job along with all of my coworkers because my employer closed the office in town. So all of us are out of jobs. It's been a depressing week. All right, I'll be fine.
I mean, it's 5 months from now that this comes out, and I bet you're in a much better place.
Oh,
future JD,
I
hope
sure
you're
hope
doing
so.
really well.
I do too. Anyway, we are here to talk about films. What's the film that we're talking about today, Michelle?
Ooh, we are talking about an appropriately named horror movie, Scare Me.
Scare Me is the name of the film. Like we always do, I'm going to give you the description as listed right there on the Shudder website. This one is called Scare Me. During a power outage, two strangers tell scary stories. The more Fred and Fanny commit to their tales, the more the stories come to life in the dark of a Catskills cabin. The horrors of reality manifest when Fred confronts his ultimate fear. Fanny may be the better storyteller. Bum, bum, bum. A Shudder original. Michelle, give us them spoiler-free thoughts on Scare Me.
I am so upset that they named her Fanny. That is such a stupid name, and I can't believe that an adult woman would choose to go by that name. I'm so sorry to any Fannies out there. If you are older than 80, it is okay. If you are in your 30s, you probably go by a nickname. That is just such a weird name, and I'm so sorry. I say this as a basic bitch named Michelle. Like, that is a very common name. And I hate that they named her Fanny. It was a bad choice. Also, this movie is named Scare Me, but I was never scared. It is not a very good horror movie. That said, it is a great movie, and I want more. And I just want Aya Cash and Josh Rubin doing things forever, and I cannot get enough. And I was very entertained. This acting and the way that they blend imagination with reality is so perfect. And you know what? This gets a 5 from me.
Oh, wow. I have to agree with you. Yeah, I have to agree with you. I've often talked about how Shudder brings us titles that are horror and horror adjacent. And I think this definitely falls into that world of horror adjacent. It's a very atmospheric movie. It definitely has some spooky elements involved. I also was not ever scared at any point, but I do think it's a very well-crafted movie. I love how it plays. It's a little bit more character-driven than I typically like my films, but the characters, it's a nice balance of the story first being driven by the characters and then the characters then informing and driving the plot. I really enjoy the progression of it. It's a very nice slow burn. The sudden appearance of Chris Redd later in the film it adds an element that I didn't see coming and is super very funny in a lot of ways. I don't know if I can go a full 5 skulls on this one right there with you, but I can definitely go 4 skulls on this one. I had a good time.
Awesome.
I think it's definitely worth checking out. It's a very fun. I'll talk more about my deep thoughts on it here in a little bit, obviously how we do, but yeah, I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal. It is well done, and I love it.
I also agree with you, though. Fanny is a terrible name. I don't know why they
I've never met an adult woman who is in her 30s and named Fanny. Like, I don't know why. Okay, so I could understand somebody being born today and being named Fanny, and that's just their name. Like, that makes sense to me. What I do not understand is somebody writing a movie and their name is Fanny. That's the part that's confusing.
Yeah, yeah, I understand entirely. It's anyway, guys. This is where we're gonna hit the pause button, or you should hit the pause button if you want to go check this movie out before we dig into all of the spoilers and details here. Right now, hit that pause button here. All right. So Scare Me. This movie, here's one of the things that I love the most about it, right? I like a small, very intimate, dialogue-driven movie like this in certain occasions, and this is one of them. This felt so much, for the first chunk of it, like just a really fun night of friends sitting around a campfire telling spooky stories, trying to scare the pants off each other. I thought they captured that atmosphere incredibly well. The things they do with the shadows and the lighting to sort of reinforce some of the things that are happening in the stories that they're telling. I thought that was really well done. Again, as we've talked about before, it takes a lot these days after everything I've seen and how long I've been watching movies like this to ever be genuinely scared by something. So I wasn't at any point frightened at all. But I also love how towards the end of the movie, it turns on its head. And for a short while there, it is more or less a traditional slasher film, and it gets into some aggressive action. I think ultimately what I love about it, here's something I was thinking the entire time I was watching this movie. This movie could very easily translate into a live stage show, and I would love to see that.
That was one of my notes as well. So I really like movies when they are so good that you could see a live adaptation and it would be the exact same movie.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorite horror movies is called Low, L-O. It's a little lesser known, but it is the exact same thing of just the acting carries it so well that you could see a live adaptation. It would be the exact same experience, and that's what I love about this. Like, without Aya Cash and Josh Rubin, if they had been replaced by anybody else, it might not have been a success. They are just such good and versatile actors that I was right there with them the whole time. I'm just blown away by their acting, and they carried this movie. And of course, Chris Redd shows up, and then the driver at the very beginning was working on her own story based on the Bible. She sets the tone so well of yes, this is going to be a silly comedy. But it's just Aya and Josh are so good.
Yeah, I love especially Josh Rubin's performance. I think a different actor would have looked at this role and played that character maybe with a little bit more subdued menace, a little bit more aggressively, just a little bit more that type of the imposing kind of male presence. But I love that he plays it a little bit more like he's this very sort of anxious, neurotic, especially once he finds out who she is and that she's this famous author. He gets inside his own head, and he's this really squirrely sort of I don't know, there's a weirdness to him that sort of amps up the atmosphere for me, especially when you get into the more aggressive parts towards the end.
You know what I really love about this? I love these characters, and they are not likable.
No, there's nobody in this movie. Well, I guess the pizza
Except for
delivery
Chris.
guy. Yeah, Chris Red, the
Yeah,
pizza delivery guy,
he's great.
his character is awesome. But yeah,
Yes,
neither one of these people are nice people. They're not likable in any way, shape, or
and yet I
form.
still love them
Yeah,
so much. And I'm like, Fanny is such a condescending bitch, and yet I want to be friends with her, and I want to see her tear down other people as long as it's not directed at me. Like, she's
right.
so condescending and like just. She drove me crazy, and yet I loved her so much. And normally, like we've talked about in this show before, sometimes I will dislike a character so much that I can't get into the movie.
Yep.
Looking at you, Bliss, aside from the fact that you had me having a epileptic
I
situations
love that
over
movie.
here. I know. But that was one where I disliked her so much and I never got on board. This one, I disliked them and I still loved them. They were that good.
I think this
Phenomenal.
movie having a decidedly more deliberate comedic element probably helps
Mhm.
that a lot.
Yeah.
But I could definitely see that. Yeah, they're both just so like incredibly unlikable and annoying and just man.
But they're
I
such
do
good
like
storytellers that
yes.
it's okay.
Yeah, I was really impressed, honestly. It's not the same type of movie, but there's a movie that does something similar to this called Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Where and what I like about this movie is it very much does transition out of this campfire storytelling, spooking each other out, sort of character-driven piece into its final act, where I mean, it more or less, like I say, it becomes a slasher movie in that last act. And I thought, obviously, because the movie hasn't been in that mode since the beginning, it's only ever going to be able to accomplish so much. But I thought it was absolutely as effective as it could possibly be as the capstone to a movie like this. I thought they did a really good job of shifting the tone into that sort of darker, creepier presentation, a little bit more serious, a little bit more violent. I thought they handled that really, really well.
Yeah, the social commentary that they add at the end, kind of like a man feeling emasculated by a woman, that could have gone in such a bad direction if
Yeah.
they had like tweaked it in like so many little things could have been like a, oh my god, they have like this really big story to add at the end after all of this. Like it could have been kind of like preachy, but the way that they delivered it was absolutely perfect, where it was just, this guy is clearly messed up in the head. He has this idea, and Aya is even like, sorry, Fanny,
Yeah.
is even like kind of like, oh wow, no, really, of course, like a man's feeling emasculated. And like that's kind of, as a woman, how I felt about it, of like, oh, of course this guy is intimidated. So it just, the way that they delivered it, it didn't feel preachy, and I was really happy about that. I got kind of worried when they got to that point of like, are you gonna try to give us like a big message now after all the stuff that we just watched, and clearly this is not like a deep movie. And I'm glad that they did not go so far
Right.
into it. It very like, it kind of shallowly touches on something that we all know is a thing, and then it turns into, you know,
Right.
the potential slasher.
It's
Yeah.
definitely, it's not a movie about the overall environment of the reaction of men who feel emasculated, but it's definitely a movie about a man who feels emasculated.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. I love that. Also, though, like you said, I think a part of what makes that also something that doesn't become unbearable is that, yes, maybe his reaction is too much. You know, he's overreacting. He's way past the line here. But he is certainly not without cause to a certain
Yeah.
extent. I mean, this lady is basically stealing, not necessarily his ideas, but at least ideas that he had a hand in, that she had no intention whatsoever of ever putting his name on anything. So like, yeah, they're not likable. It's also, I think the movie ends the only way it really can, and still be respectable. Like, I think a different movie, or a movie in the wrong hands, would have maybe tried to kill both of them, or something. But no, I think the movie ends. I think even though they're both unlikable characters, the one who deserved to die the most is the one who died. In a horror movie context, for sure.
Yeah, this movie could have gone on too long with the ending, and they do like very solidly like wrap it up where she refuses to kill him, she leaves, the driver comes in, she steals a piece of pizza, and then she just like, oh, and it ends so quickly. And I like that. I like that they did not draw this out into like, what did she go on to do? Did she make that movie?
Wait, did you not see the post or the mid-credits scene?
There's a mid-credits scene?
Yeah.
I can't tell if you're fucking with me.
No, I'm serious. Not. There's actually a scene where it cuts to a bookstore, and that lady who was the driver has published the book as her own book.
I am watching it right this second. Hang on.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Hang on.
She's literally. We're doing this on a Skype type call, and I'm watching her watch it.
Grandpa's Werewolves and Other Spooky Stories. Bettina Sixkowski.
That's so funny that you were like, oh, I'm like it just ends, and I'm like, no, she totally steals the book.
Oh my God, I love that so much. when you said she is at a book signing, I thought you meant Aya Cash, and I was like,
no.
Oh, really?
No, the driver.
Oh my God, the driver steals the book.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I have seen this movie 3 times. I've never known there's a mid-credit scene.
Michelle, always
That
watch
is
to
so
the end
good.
of the credits.
Normally horror movies don't have that. Like I do with action movies.
Always watch to the end of the credits,
God.
Michelle.
But horror movies are like porn, where I get to the end, I am done.
No,
why do I keep watching?
I did the same thing when I saw Ty West's X earlier this year. I left as soon as the credits rolled, and I didn't see the post-credits scene. I had to hear about it and then watch it on YouTube's later. So I
haven't seen X,
but
yet, so I'm good. I'm glad to know that.
Yeah,
oh
so
God.
that's what happens with that book. It actually becomes a thing.
Perfect.
And also a perfect capstone of the idea of none of these people are likable because even she stole and took credit for a book she didn't write.
Yeah. The only one who's likable is the pizza guy who just wants to do cocaine.
Yeah.
He just wants to do cocaine, get an autograph.
This is one of my favorite parts about the movie is Fanny never even mentions the cocaine until the pizza guy shows up. And then for some reason it's like a switch. She's just like, oh yeah, I also have some cocaine. You guys want to do some cocaine? And that's when
love that.
As a person who has definitely had his ups and downs with substance use in his day, and as a person who knew what the tempo and the tone of this movie was, when she's like just drops out, you guys want to do some cocaine? I was just like, oh, this movie's about to get real good. And
God.
Here's what I can tell you is,
yeah.
Aya Cash and Josh Rubin and Chris Redd have all clearly done some cocaine in their time because they did a perfect reenactment of what it would be like of 3 people telling scary stories in a Catskills cabin all loaded up on cocaine.
Oh my God, so good. It's so good. The mid-credit scene, like I'm still reacting.
Yeah.
And I am very solidly like still in my 5-star out of 5 stars.
That's a
so
found
brilliant.
moment right here on the podcast, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen.
And they won't get to know about it until 5 months
until
from
October.
Now.
I do really want to point out, like, it's a really well written movie, and again, I would very much like to see it as like a live stage production. Which also you can get away with because it takes place mostly in a single location. It's a very small cast. But I do want to reinforce that, especially in those earlier storytelling scenes, there are things they do with the lights and the shadows to add atmosphere and vibe to those stories that I still think are just, they're very subtle and very, not subtle is not the right word. They're very small. They're not big, epic, grandiose special effects, but clearly working with what they had to work with to do what I thought they found some very clever ways to add some extra spooky atmosphere to a movie that otherwise would have just been a creepy dark house.
Yeah, the first time I watched this and we got to the werewolf story and they started doing all these little things like the police car shows up and then there's blue and red lights, that way that they blend the fantasy with the reality is why I love this movie so much.
Super cool.
Because it's just so well done and it's so subtle and just like, it's just brilliant. Without those two in the roles that they were in, it might have been a different movie, and I am glad that we don't have that different movie and we have this movie because it is brilliant and I love it.
So I think that's pretty much all that needs to be said about Scare Me. Michelle gives it a 5. I give it a 4. That's 4.5. With this and Color Out of Space yesterday, man, I'm anxious about what's going to happen. Well, tomorrow we've got a new movie, I believe. Well, it depends. As long as they're still releasing on Thursdays, who knows what's going to happen by the time it might be Friday. But anyway, we got more movies coming up in October. There'll be one every day still for the rest of the month. We're on a roll here.
Yeah, we are being very generous to these movies that we didn't get to record right when they came out, because I've basically given like a 4 or a 5 to most of them.
One of us is being very generous. One of us is being very generous
I'm really
to these
loving
movies.
All these.
I honestly,
like 'em.
I've had a couple of moments, especially with adding these extra pre-records in. I've had a couple of moments where I'm just like, Jesus, JD, you started a podcast where you supposedly love horror movies, and the bulk of your reviews so far have not been terribly positive.
Yeah, the twin in the room got half a skull.
Oh,
and
those movies are terrible.
I'm so
awful.
tentative to even give like a 1 because I find the redeeming part of all of these somewhere where I'm like, yeah, I guess the acting's okay, but I do genuinely love the ones that we've been covering lately.
So we got new stuff. There'll be a new title in the next day or so. I believe our next back catalog title is The Cleansing Hour. Is that correct?
Yep.
Looking forward to talking about that and other movies. If you're not a Shudder subscriber, you should be. It's like $6-7 a month. It's totally worth it. At least as of the recording of this episode, we are still not affiliated with Shudder or AMC Networks in any way. If anybody has got the hookup there and they want to help us get connected so that, I don't know, maybe they want us to do a podcast under their banner where we talk shit about movies that they released, or maybe they don't.
You talk shit about them. I'm
not all of them,
just the ones
that need to be talked shit about. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's true. We're looking at you, the twin.
The twin.
Or Night's End.
All right, guys. Thank you once again for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope to hear from you soon. If you like movies in general, do me a favor. Do me a solid. Check out my other podcast, All Screens Great and Small, where my buddy Scott Ecker and I talk about not a lot of horror movies, but other movies in general. Thank you for listening. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.
Woohoo. 2 hits in a row.